Well, when you look at me, please tell me you see that I have like a face, right? Black Mirror, I am almost caught up. I'm gonna kind of miss not having more of these to get to on the docket anymore. But, well, until there's a new season. But in any case, Men Against Fire. I am gonna cut right to the chase. This is right now competing with the Waldo moment for my least favorite episode of Black Mirror, although for a different reason. In the case of the Waldo moment, that was about the only one that I'd seen where I felt like the idea wasn't fully refined yet. Like the script needed one more revision. Things weren't quite gelling at the level because, generally in Black Mirror, whatever the idea is, the writing is just at a very high level, and I just felt like the Waldo moment wasn't quite there. This one, it's different. This one just was so predictable. And I mean, I've had, there have been episodes of this, actually, just the last one, just San Junipero. I said that there was nothing that happened in it that was particularly surprising to me. But the thing is, that's not necessarily a requirement, because if it is written at a high enough level, it can still impact you regardless. Actually, I think in a lot of ways that's a sign of truly great writing, because surprises are kind of the easy way to make any emotion you give someone hit harder. It's why jump scares are in all the cheap horror movies. It's why really sudden tragic deaths, they get the tear going for it. If it's a surprise, it ups the emotional impact. But if something can really get emotional impact out of you, even though it's not all that surprising, that really is a sign of good writing. It's a big part of what I loved about San Junipero. In this case, not only did nothing surprise me, unlike San Junipero, this felt very much like it was structured with the intention that stuff was supposed to be surprising me. So this was a case where I felt really far ahead of the story, and that generally tends to result in boredom. Ultimately, I had the notion of almost everything that was going to happen and was going to pan out at 13 minutes into this movie. And if this sounds really precise, is because when I had the thought process, I actually paused it and said, how far into this am I? I'm like 13 minutes. I'm like, I hope this has something, this is going to sneak something in on me, because otherwise I've figured out an hour-long piece of narrative 13 minutes in. Please tell me I'm wrong. And I wasn't. And I think maybe part of it is that I think there were two missteps. I think the concept, while good and a sound one, it's actually one I've seen done before. There was, I think it was an Outer Limits episode, not original series, like one of the revival series, where there was something very similar. I think it was in a war and they had soldiers on drugs, ostensibly to keep them immune from a disease that caused them to see their enemy as monsters, so that it was easier for them to kill them. So it's a concept I'd already seen done. And oftentimes with Black Mirror, these are ideas that maybe the core of the idea I've seen done, but not the way in which it's handled. And by that I mean a lot of Black Mirror's themes are things that we've seen handled before. Themes of fear of dying, fear of loss, the deterioration of the mind, dependency on certain pieces of technology or social aspects. These are all themes that I've seen done elsewhere, but I haven't seen them play out quite the way that they have in the way Black Mirror tends to do when it tackles them. This, I felt like I'd already seen it done, and I'd seen it done in almost this precise way. And the other thing, unfortunately, is I think the episode tipped its hand very early as well, because when Stripe gets his little heads-up display in his head, and he's sort of putting his hand through, like, oh, look at that. Like, that was drawing too much attention to it. And again, maybe I've seen too many of these things, and by these things I mean both Black Mirror episodes and sci-fi twist stories in general. But my brain immediately went, they would not be drawing this much attention to this if this was not going to somehow play into the twist. And when there's all this build up to the roaches and we haven't seen them yet, and I was hoping that it was my initial hope that the roaches were actually going to be some sort of, if not piece of technology, kind of like the dogs in Metalhead, then maybe, some sort of weird technological, biological hybrid. But when it turned out just to be weird looking humans, my immediate thought was the thing in his eyes makes them look like that. They're normal people. And I called that so early in the episode, and then I thought, well, maybe the twist as to why they're killing these particular people, that'll be interesting. And I don't want to knock that either, because I think it was left deliberately vague, which I think was one of the good calls, actually, because when the guy is sort of telling him about why these people have to die, he's basically talking about genetic purity. He's talking about people who have been genetically screened and there are health issues or mental issues, or as he called them, sexual deviancies. So, anyone who's out there who is or who cares about somebody who has a mental illness, has a physical condition, is not cisgender and heterosexual, hi. You that was the one moment that sort of gave me that sinking gut feeling of, oh my God, because just make the monsters make it easy to wipe out people. And an acknowledgement that, yeah, what we're doing is awful, and we're going to do this to make it easier. That's that was sort of the one moment, that conversation he has with his superior, in that interrogation room, and also his ultimate choice, his acceptance of the lie. That rings pretty true as well, and the level it was taken to, where he goes back to this dilapidated, colorless, empty home that he sees as lush and beautiful, and with a wife who loves him, who is not there. So, like, the very end, it managed to get at me a little bit, but by that point, I'd spend so much of the episode just going, please tell me you've got something up your sleeve besides just, these are people who don't look like people because of the tech, and it kind of didn't. So I think the problem was, even though by the end it didn't win me back completely by the end, but by the end it was doing stuff right, and it was doing stuff that was actually putting in a bit of an impact. But that was like with 10 minutes left in the episode. So the thing's about an hour long. So 13 minutes in, I figured out exactly where this is going and how this is going to play out, pretty much to the letter. The last 10 minutes are in no way surprising or unexpected, but are well done. But that leaves me with almost 40 minutes in the middle that are just me kind of going, yeah, I know. And the other thing is, it didn't help where the character he's seen the most with are, the no-nonsense sergeant type and the trigger-happy, sexually repressed character, which are both really well-trodden grounds. And I personally am not of the opinion that making them women as opposed to men, which they would usually be in these kinds of stories, is not enough to make them interesting. It makes them ever so slightly less of a slog to watch, because it shifts the dynamic a little. But functionally, these characters are identical to the kinds of characters you always see in these sorts of things. I mean, in terms of behavior, if I were to tell you, oh, there's this military team and here's the no-nonsense sergeant who issues the orders, that field commander, she acts exactly like you would expect that to ask. Or if I said, oh, there's one member of the team who's a little like, yeah, let's get in there, like, oh, man, that would have made me come so hard, and stuff like that. If I told you that there was a character who acted like that, she acts exactly like that. Making her a woman alone is not enough to suddenly make this an interesting character as opposed to an archetype. So, yeah, it pulled together some impactful stuff at the very end, but it wasn't enough because I was kind of slogging through it up to that point, which is a first for Black Mirror. I've never felt like an episode was a slog before, but this one kind of was. And like I said, I don't know if I like this less than the Waldo moment, or if I like the Waldo moment a little bit better, because their problems are very different. So I don't know. If I ever do a total ranking, it's the bottom is probably going to be these two battling it out. But I will say that I think maybe if Black Mirror is your primary sci-fi, twisty, kind of scary, future tech, what will it mean show, and this is like the only one you watch, maybe it would have worked better for you. Because if I hadn't seen that Outer Limits episode, I think it was Outer Limits, I could be completely wrong about that, but if I hadn't seen an episode of something that was basically this exact same premise, maybe I wouldn't have gotten so far ahead of it. I think I probably would have figured it out pretty well ahead of when it was, but maybe not as early as I did. So maybe if other folks, haven't seen so much of this stuff that they can guess these things as early as I did. And I'm not saying that as a bragging thing. I'm not proud of that. That annoyed me. It detracted from my my viewing experience. But how did it work for you? Men Against Fire. What did you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. There's all the stuff to do. I can be supported on Patreon. I got a Twitter. I got a podcast. I got t-shirts for sale. Links for all that stuff and more is down in the description. So until next time, this council is adjourned.